now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Let me say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, but certainly never good night, and never, ever goodbye, because I hated goodbyes from a little child. My name is Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles. And we got the pandemic going on, and we got the ashes from the wildfires burning all around us. But that's okay. We're going to keep on serving the Lord and lifting Him up, because that's the only way that we can make it, is give God the glory and give God the praise no matter what. And like every faithful Christian, I'm holding on to the bloodstained banner, and I'm climbing on up the King's Highway. This offering or this presentation that you're now looking at is a social activism, social justice themed program. It's titled It's Time, and it's always time for justice in America and around the world. And truly, with the revelations coming out of the White House, it's time for justice, don't you think? And that justice must always include, I always say, environmental justice. That's what sociologists teach us, that your environment impacts you. Your environment impacts where you shop. Your environment impacts where you go to school. Your environment impacts your health. Your environment impacts your mood. Your environment, I mean everything, the society around you, as well as the physical region or geographic location where you may have been placed, because most of us didn't pick where we wanted to live. We were forced into where we are, and then some of us may have been blessed of God since the 1968 Federal Housing Administration Act to be able to abide in a more affluent or better area where you get better access to food, better access to shopping choices, better parks, and all that type of thing. And you're not worried about the toxins, industrial waste, and industrial chemicals that may have been dumped in and around your area, and may be still there. Because like I said, if you get forced into an area, you may be forced into where the refuse sanitation factories is, all kind of noise and all of that type of thing. And so you need environmental justice. You need environmental justice, and then you must always have economic justice. And that economic justice brings us to a discussion quite acceptably of reparations. Reparation is to repair, it is to make whole, it is to remediate, it is to make amends for something that one may have done as an injury to another, especially one nation against its individual or nation against its citizen. Yes, I know we talk about you can't sue City Hall, but the City Hall still got to look out for the citizen, because the citizen pay the taxes. And that brings us to a discussion of the need for reparations from slavery, and reparations from Reconstruction, and reparations from Jim Crow, and reparations from segregation, and reparations from all of the missed opportunities that were denied black people by law. After all, slavery was nothing but 246 years of affirmative action for white people, because we sure didn't benefit. I wish I had a witness. Let me read now. Deuteronomy chapter 15, picking up the reading at verse 12, says these words: "And if thy brother an Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him or her go free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let him or her go away empty, but thou shalt furnish them out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto them. That is the reading of the sacred word of God, attempting to make whole, or attempting to be just in one's dealings with slavery. Now remember that the type of slavery practiced in the Bible is not the chattel slavery, my personal trophy slavery practice here in the 13 colonies, and later in the entire Union, and then still later by the United States of America. And so there is a great void, there is a great need, and there is a debt that must be acknowledged. No, it has never been paid. As the late W.B. Du Bois said, there were 7 mystical years from 1865 on, 7 mystical years when they had an opportunity up until 1872 to get it right. If the slaves had been given land, that's what Du Bois said. If slaves had been given land, that's what Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner were pushing for. If the slaves could have been given land, if the Southern fire eaters, who were still defiant after their defeat, if they had not been allowed to come back into their seats, reclaim their seats in the Congress, then America would have had a chance to have lived up to its creed. The late Thurgood Marshall makes the point that the Constitution that we say that we observe is not that original Constitution, because as Thurgood Marshall said, he didn't consider the founding fathers to be that far-sighted. Thank God. Because he says all you have to do is look at the first 3 words of that Constitution, we the people. And at that time, as when the founding fathers used this phrase in 1787, they did not have in mind the majority of America's citizens. We the people included, in the words of our framers, the whole number of free persons. United States Constitution, it goes on to that blah blah blah. You look that up for your own self. For instance, on a matter so basic as the right to vote, the Negro slaves were excluded, although they were counted for representational purposes but only at 3/5 each. Women did not gain the right to vote for over 150 years. The 13th Amendment was ratified in 1920. These are not my saying. These are the sayings of the great Thurgood Marshall, who graduated from Howard University, and who was whose mentor rather was the great and late Charles Hamilton Houston. Marshall goes on to say these omissions were intentional. The record of the framers' debates on the slave question is especially clear. The southern states acceded to the demands of the New England states for giving I missed my spot there, y'all. Gonna have to keep going here. But what he was saying in essence was that the slave states, the southern states, acceded to the northern states, the Congress governing commerce, in order to give them the right to continue the slave trade, them being the southern slave states. The economic interests of the regions coalesce. That means New Englanders engaged in the carrying trade, whereas the Southerners engaged in the slave labor trade, free labor. The perpetuation of slavery ensured the primary source of wealth in the southern states. So that is why Thurgood Marshall says that the original Constitution was not a perfect document, and quite rightly so. He goes on to say, despite this clear understanding of the role slavery would play in the new republic, use of the words slaves and slavery were carefully avoided in the original document. Political representation in the lower house of Congress was to be based on the population of the free persons in each state. And as we discussed before about the slaves were only counted as the total population of the slaves was only counted at 3/5 of all other persons. Moral principles against slavery for those who had them were compromised with no explanation of the conflicting principle for which the American Revolutionary War had ostensibly fought. Yes, it is as though they, as Paul said, they had seared their conscience with a hot iron. But I digress. It says here, the self-evident truth that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, were, of course, what you call a cognitive dissonance when it came to the slave. All right. Thurgood Marshall goes on to say it was not the first such compromise. Even these ringing phrases from the Declaration of Independence are filled with irony, for an early draft of what became that declaration assailed the King of England for suppressing legislative attempts to end the slave trade and for encouraging slave rebellion. All right. So there you have it, from greatest mind that ever was on the Supreme Court, as far as I'm concerned, the late Thurgood Marshall. And so quite naturally you understand that it took a great civil war, I didn't read that part, in order to get the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments into that the Constitution. So the Constitution that we are living under now is that came about since Abraham Lincoln said this nation shall have a new birth of freedom. And so the Reconstruction following the Civil War was an attempt to bring about that better, more perfect union. And sad to say, we ain't got there yet. We still don't have a more perfect union. Blacks didn't get the right to vote until 1964, Voting Rights Act 1965, and so you can see that it got a lot of ground for this country to make up. No matter how they try to shake their fist and shake their head and say, I had nothing to do with it. Yeah, you had everything to do with it. You're receiving the benefits and the advantages and the fruits of that 246 years of labor right now because of your position in life. And certainly when I was born, a little barefoot boy down there in Houston, Texas, like I say, they had us kind of hemmed in in our little neighborhood community we call Central Garden. That's where we had to start, and we had to work our way out. White folks was over here, black folks was over there. So that's where it was. And I got a new word I want to interject into your vocabulary, and that is a term of necro political and biopower. Now the word necro-political, well, you know where the prefix necro comes from a Greek word or Latin word meaning to do with death. And the first time I heard of necrophilia was, first time I heard of necro was in relation to necrophilia, which I heard defined as a person who loves to have sex with dead folks, with corpses. Necro, so you have the necropolitics, and necropolitics is defined as the ability or the power to define how some people shall live and how other people shall die. And along with that word necropolitical is the word that goes along with it, called biopower. Of course, these are not terms that I came up with on my own. The late Dr. Franz Fanon, and then the concurrent overseas philosopher Dr. Falcone have introduced these terms into the political science or the social science and the sociological attempts to define for the people what we are confronting. And I use that word because of the fact that you had the revelations from the President of the United States that yes, he knew that the coronavirus was airborne, that it was far more dangerous than the flu, and that it was going to impact adversely the health of many people. But he said he wanted to downplay it. He would not tell the public the truth. He would not be a leader in that regard. He was a coward. He looked out for his own political algorithm. He was a craven politician. If it don't hurt me, I ain't gonna say nothing about it. And I think back to when he was having all of those rallies with people with no mask on, when he knew in his briefing, he knew it enough to tell Bob Woodward way back there in February when he was interviewing him for his book that he was going to write, that he knew the effects were going to be bad, but he didn't warn the people. And it seems like he had very little regard, no regard for the Democrats, but then he didn't look like he had much regard for the Republicans either. The people in his cabinet, the people in his staff, the people at those rallies. Remember, what's his name went out there in defiance of the pandemic restrictions and was seen on camera just having a good time at the Trump rally. I'm talking about the late Herman Cain. And he come back home from there and come down with the coronavirus, and he died. Now, was that what do you call it? Playing it down, downplaying it? Don't you think he should have sounded the alarm? Doesn't the Bible tell us that when God sends the sword or God sends the pestilence, and He tells you to warn the people, and you warn them, then and if the people go ahead, then it's on their head. But if He tell you to warn and you don't warn them, now it's on your head. And believe me, a lot of those 191,000 deaths that have occurred are on the head of one Donald John Trump, because he knew, but he said nothing. He kept his mouth shut. He was sarcastic toward his own CDC team right there in the White House. He took over the briefings, talking about bleach yourself out with Clorox and all that kind of stuff. Use ultraviolet light, like he was some kind of medical doctor, you know. And he let the states compete against each other instead of stepping forward as the leader of the country and said, look, we're going to purchase all of this PPE, and we're going to see that you get it. which would have been the right thing to do. We had shortages of gowns, shortages of masks, shortages of footies, whatever they call those things, booties that the surgeons and people wear when they're coming in and out of contagious situations. If we ever did have the best health care in the world, we don't have it no more, not under Donald John Trump. And so Mr. Trump has a lot to answer for. I'm sure he has a guilty conscience, but then maybe not. But you can only compare him to the actions of President James Buchanan, who knew that the Southerners were plotting secession and was doing everything he could in the Oval Office to facilitate it, to make it easy for them to break away from the country. Thank God you had somebody coming on like Abraham Lincoln said, "You get out here, I'm going to kick you behind." And so that's why we still have a union. Otherwise, the whole country would have been quietly, as he said, given away. And so I don't think you can let Mr. Trump off the hook for saying he didn't want to panic. Well, what about all these deaths? What about all these cases? A lot of people have contracted that disease that maybe would not have had he given the alarm earlier. He had taken the matter seriously because he knew it was serious. That's my point. You see, he knew to do better, but he wouldn't do it. That's a coward. Yes, cowardice. They tell Reverend Martin said you're a coward, and you need to be held responsible for that because it wasn't right. And all those people thinking about New York City when Governor Cuomo had to just literally shut the whole state down to get control of that virus. And here we are in the month of September 2020, and we still don't have a viable test. And we do not have a standardized test, a uniform test that is dependable. And neither do we have a magic pill. We have no vaccine. We have no shot. We have none of those things. And this tyrant is in the White House and openly admitting that he misled the general public. My. And I guess his backers are going to support him to the guillotine. But it doesn't bode well. It doesn't demonstrate good leadership. No, not at all. I was going to talk about the Constitution today, but I think we better stay on that necro-political and that biopower theme because of the fact that Mr. Trump is determining how some people shall live and how other people must die. That's necropolitics right there. Biopower. He has the power of life and death. He had the power to warn the people early in the month of February. Some say it was as far back as January, but he said nothing. He kept his mouth shut. That's exercise of power to determine life and to determine death. You see? And that is alarming that such a scatterbrained person should have that much power in their hands. And you can see how he has exercised power. And you can see what a sad condition, a sad shape that the nation is coming down to. And all of our healthcare infrastructure system has been strained and to the max. And he did nothing to ameliorate, nothing to end the shortages or that type of thing. He let the states compete against each other, driving up the price of those goods, driving up the price of a mask and everything of that sort. And And I believe he said that he sent 800 tons, or maybe $800 million worth of medical supplies to China. Well, we needed those supplies here. Help me. And so again, there's another demonstration of what you call necropolitics. The man is controlling how we live, and he's controlling how some of us must die. Well, every time you hear about a death now, that death must be laid at the foot of Donald Trump if it's a coronavirus death. The people in the rest homes, can't nobody go in there and visit. Can't nobody go in there and see about them. In other words, they go in there and they're not coming out until they die. That's what's in their mind now. That's a terrible realization for any sick person or elderly person to have to confront, knowing that you look out the window but you can't go out the door. Help me, somebody. And I have one of my own members who has a daughter who is in a coma, and as a result of the coronavirus, she has very limited visitation privileges. And now that the girl has been transferred to the rest home rehabilitation facility, she can't go and see her at all. You can only do what you call FaceTime. The nurse take the phone in there or take whatever that camera in there, and she got to try to fellowship with her daughter via a FaceTime. You can't go there and put your hands on them, or can't go there and pray for them, none of those things. All of that must be laid at the foot of one Donald John Trump. And so please, I encourage you, don't think that your vote don't count. Your vote counts. If your vote didn't count, the white folks wouldn't fought so hard to keep you from getting the right to vote. If your vote didn't count, all those southern rednecks and crackers that I grew up with wouldn't have done what they done to try to keep Negroes from voting. Your vote matters. It determines who your congressional representative is going to be. And when you get that congressional representative, hold our feet to the fire. Don't say, well, you look like me, so I know you're going to do right. No. Tell them what you need. Tell them what you want. And demand that they stay on the case until something good occurs. I've already had my 5-minute warning, so I want to remind you to keep praying for our doctors and our nurses, CNAs, certified nurses assistant, and all of that, nurses assistant, the staff and the technicians at the hospital, anesthesiologists, that phlebotomists that don't know where your vein is at. They all need prayer because they are our frontline soldiers. And God knows that the people in the store and the people in the trucks and the man and the people on the mops and the brooms and riding around on the machine trying to keep things clean, trying to keep it disinfected, we all need to lift them up in prayer. I want to thank God that for those of you that have not come down with the virus, thank God that I myself have been blessed not to come down with the virus. But that don't mean, it may not happen, because if you don't die from the virus, you're bound to die from something else. But thank God, He has given us the victory thus far in this pandemic, and allowed us to keep the church doors open, keep on preaching, keep on praying, have a Sunday school, because this is a vital necessity. As I close, again I say unto you, everybody needs to have them a side hustle, another business line venture that you got started, something that you can do on your own, because you may be working for somebody who don't want to pay you, and they may cut you out, and may not put you on full time, all that kind of stuff. My brothers and my sisters, if you're working for somebody like that, take my advice. Get on there and get you something going on, and go in there and tell them people, look, you take this job and shove it. In other words, if they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. God bless you. Thank you. Doc, we out of here.
can hardly see
Get
the
mask on, y'all.
road. I ask the question, Lord,